Hola, Lady Lauren Lee here. Um, I just want to tell you a story that happened to me. The other day I mentioned a misdemeanor that I thought I had. Um, and it turns out that it was actually a violation for harassment. I said that I was going to tell you the story, but I do have a disclaimer, and that is that I don't want any of the young ladies who may ever see this video, or anyone for that matter, who may see this video and think that what happened is okay, because it was a sad occurrence and it should have never happened. But here we go. Um, my daughter's father was a very violent man. He's deceased now. We did reconnect in the year 2000, but I did have to disappear for 15 years with my daughter without a trace because my father told him that he didn't ever want to see him on our property again. He, of course, was stubborn and he was going to do as he felt. Not, of course, in my father's face, but when he thought my father and mother were at church in Brooklyn. So he called me up and he says, I'm going to come outside and I'm going to wait outside until you come out and talk to me because I want us to get back together again. I said, I don't want to talk to you. He says, well, I'm coming anyway. He thought my parents, as I said, were at church. So I went in and I knocked on my mom and dad's door and I said, Daddy, he said he's coming over and he's going to stay outside until I come out and talk to him. Well, my father's a Gemini, June 9th. My daughter's father was a Gemini, June 19th. His father was June 19th, and his grandfather was June 19th. So I was surrounded. My current husband is June 15th. So I have a lot of Geminis in my life. But here we go. So my father, when I told him that my daughter's father was coming, he put on his bathrobe and he went out the back door. Well, as I said before, we had 6.5 acres of land. So when Daddy didn't come right back in the house, I wasn't sure why he was taking so long to come back in. I got a little nervous for him, and I'll tell you why. Because when you are a victim of abuse, you really, really think that the person who's abusing you is all powerful. Because he's so powerful in your life, you think he can hurt everyone else. So I was afraid for all. That's why women who are abused keep the abuse to themselves and they hide it. Because they don't want to see their sister get hurt or their mother or father or aunt or an uncle get hurt trying to defend them with this maniac. But really, you're the only one that's afraid of him. Your family's 9 times out of 10 not afraid of this person who's abusing you. But anyway, back to the story. He came to the property. My daughter's father did come to the property. Daddy went out the back door. My mother sent me out. I said, Mommy, Daddy's been out there for quite a while. Needless to say, I said he put on his bathrobe. I forgot to tell you one little detail. I'm sure that he had Roscoe in his pocket. My father was a licensed marksman. He taught marksmanship for the Police Athletic League on Long Island for quite a while. So he was a sharpshooter and he had guns. He was a gun enthusiast. Everything was legal. And we didn't play around with his guns, and we knew that that was no area to be fooling around. So he respected his weapons. We respected his weapons. But anyway, like I said, I know he had Roscoe in his pocket, a 357 Magnum, a beautiful silver gun, and it was a beautiful instrument. I don't really like guns. I don't want one around, but that was Daddy. Anyway, so when he didn't come right back in, my mother told me to go to the back door and call him. And as I was going past the front door to go out and call Daddy from the back door, I heard all this rustling outside the front door. Well, I didn't know what it was. I went over to the door, and we had a little window that you could open up on the door. So I opened the window, and Daddy was out there. He had the gun in pointing it at my daughter's father's head, um, saying things like, I thought I told you not to come back on my property. I thought I told you that I was going to, what I would do if you came back. And he was pleading for his life. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I won't come back again. I won't come back again. He was surprised. He thought my mom and dad, he thought they were in Brooklyn, like I said. So anyway, to make a long story short, about a month later, I was in my town getting some tires for my car. He spotted my car. I don't know if he spotted it or someone called him and said they saw me, but he came up to my car, jumped in my front seat, and threatened me. He kidnapped me. And he was determined to go to the babysitter's house and get our daughter, who was she was about 2 years old at the time. So I told him, you can't go to the babysitter's house because I have a restraining order against you there, and you're not allowed on her property, and you're not allowed on my parents' property. Well, he wasn't going to pay attention to anybody's restraining order. So he says, I'll get my own blankety blank daughter. I was afraid. I had just started carrying a weapon in my pocketbook. It was not a gun, it was a knife. I didn't really know how to use it. I'm not a violent person, but I knew that one day I was going to need protection, immediate protection. That day had arrived. He got out of the car and he said we were going to his house, no matter whether we liked it or not. So basically I was being kidnapped and he was about to go get my daughter. I knew once he got my daughter in his hand, I would not be able to protect myself or the baby because, you can't attack a man who's holding your baby. So I knew that we were going to be in trouble had he ever gotten his hands on my daughter. So I had to stop him before he got to the babysitter's, well, actually before he went inside the babysitter's door. As a matter of fact, he stepped in the door, he opened up her door, stepped in. Her son, who was shell-shocked from Vietnam, a big guy, was sitting right there in a chair by the door. So when he stepped in and saw this big man sitting in this chair, he stepped back out. And when he stepped back out, I plunged the knife into his neck. In the movies, when they stab someone, they go down, they die, they pass out. It's not like that in real life. He turned around. I knew this would happen because I didn't really know what I was doing. He turned around and he came at me. This is so horrible. I pulled the knife out of his neck and started stabbing because he was coming at me. I was so afraid. I was screaming for help, and I still remember the skin opening up and the adipose tissue showing, the white tissue filling in with the blood. I want to tell you, I was in therapy for almost 2 years after this event. It was horrible. I couldn't touch a knife after that. If I wanted to cook chicken, I cut it with a butter knife. I was really kind of a mess after this. Well, anyway, I had never been in trouble. I was arrested 3 days later. I wasn't sure if he was alive or dead, but I know he jumped in my car and drove off. And I never saw him again for 3 days. So 3 days later, the police came to my mom's house. The kids were outside playing jump rope, and I was under arrest. They didn't put handcuffs on me or anything like that, but because they couldn't find a judge, I had to spend the night in jail. That morning, I went to court with the other, with a lot of other women. At that point, I was handcuffed next to them. It was like a little chain. And they let me out on my own recognizance. I had never been in trouble. He, on the other hand, was spoiled. His mother was a doctor. His friends came from affluent African-American families. They were spoiled rotten. And they kind of were some bad guys, So they had a reputation. I did not. They let me out on my on ROR, like I said. And I had a year's probation. Well, I packed up my stuff and I moved to Texas like within a week because I knew I would never be able to shop again. He would be haunting me like a vulture, looking for me to pay me back for what happened with my dad, you know. So I left New York and I moved to Texas. I went to Houston for about 6 months, and then I moved to Austin with my daughter. And it was wonderful to be able to live and not have to look over my shoulder or worry about this abusive person bothering us again. Well, I disappeared for 15 years and without a trace. My family knew where I was, but he did not, and they kept that a secret. They protected me that way, and I'm forever grateful for that. We reconnected again 15 years later. I made him a memory book of his daughter, Girl Scouts, you know, Catholic school, ballet. I wanted to show him what he missed in her upbringing. That's another whole story. But anyway, the misdemeanor. All these years, first it was a felony, assault with a deadly weapon, which was reduced to a misdemeanor. And I pick up a piece of paper last week, and it says that it's not a misdemeanor at all. It's a violation for harassment. So for all these years, I thought I had a misdemeanor. I was saying yes to the misdemeanor question on job applications. And I can tell you, I feel so free now that I never ever have to answer yes to have you ever had a misdemeanor in your life. I don't know where that paper was all these years, but all I know is I don't have it, and I'm free. And I wanted to tell you that story for a couple of reasons, because I feel so good that I no longer have that criminality hanging over my head. And I also wanted to remind women that if you are abused, as I said, God, you know, He lives. But if you are abused, don't be afraid to tell someone. Don't be afraid to tell your family. There are advocacies out there. There are agencies out there for abused women and children alike. And even if you don't have children, there are agencies that you can go to without having a child, or, you know, whatever the case. You don't have to be married. They will protect you. So don't keep it to yourself, because no one else is afraid of that guy most of the time. It's usually just you that's abused, because an abuser takes over your mind. He's all powerful to you. Don't feel like he's going to hurt your relatives. Some people do that. Some people do go after the whole family. But just remember, reach out. Don't try to do it by yourself. I wanted to say that really quickly. I'm going to get off. It's going on 13 minutes, and I don't want to have a problem uploading these videos. So once I get a chance to verify and find out how I can make them a little longer, I'm going to go ahead and do that. But just remember, you're not by yourself. Be encouraged. He lives. Keep me in your prayers. I'll do the same for you. And maybe when the grand comes in later, we'll do a little video together. She likes to take over my videos and tell all my business, so I have to shut it down sometimes. But that's my boo. So everybody be well. Have a great morning. I'll talk to you later. Lady Lauron Lee here. Have a great day. Adios.